¿Qué tal amigos? Bienvenidos a un nuevo video en el canal. Muy contento de estar nuevamente con todos ustedes. Ya se soltaron las lluvias aquí en México y la verdad es que eso se agradece. Ya bajó un poquito el calor. Pero quien tuvo mucho, pero mucho calor, pues fue Marco Rubio, un gran fiel del gobierno de Donald Trump, un gran aliado del presidente de los Estados Unidos. Pero aquí tenemos una vez, señores, y lo están viendo en pantalla. Estamos viendo a Patty Murray, una gran senadora por parte del Partido Demócrata, gran defensora de todos los latinos en los Estados Unidos y de los hermanos migrantes. Y yo les invito y les aviso que vamos a ver absolutamente una obra de arte porque Patty Murray deshizo, destruyó, aniquiló y exhibió en vivo a Marco Rubio en frente de todos y lo acusa de corrupción porque también están desapareciendo fondos muy importantes desde su departamento. Así que bueno, vamos a ver este video y adelante.
Much, Chair Graham. Senator Chutz, welcome to your new role. I look forward to working with both of you. Secretary Rubio, I am deeply concerned that you have overseen a systemic campaign to dismantle USAID, impound billions of dollars that this committee actually provided, and unilaterally remake the Department of State without the slightest bit of concern that you lack the authority to do that without Congress. It has created chaos, it's caused preventable deaths across the globe, and it has undermined American leadership. As Ranking Member Schatz noted, what you have done is outright illegal, a complete violation of bipartisan appropriation laws, the Impoundment Control Act, and the Anti-Deficiency Act. Within hours of taking office, President Trump halted all foreign aid in flagrant defiance of the law. Now, under your watch, Secretary Rubio, that freeze was implemented with chaos and cruelty. And then you illegally shuttered USAID, placing everyone on leave, halting life-saving work, literally locking people out of the building and out of their devices, even in dangerous corners of our world. You paid people not to work, abandoned our partners across the globe, and chaotically recalled global staff, putting more than 1,600 Americans who served our country abroad in limbo. And when you shut down the USAID payment system, you even refused to pay for services provided before the illegal freeze. You fought all the way to the Supreme Court, against paying for services U.S. businesses already rendered with funding that Congress already provided. And I know you know, Mr. Secretary, but you lost. And I assume you need the reminder because to this day, you have not made all the payments that are required by our nation's highest court. And as a result, American companies continue to lay off American workers. And by the way, you do continue to lose in court, including just yesterday over your move to illegally replace the U.S. Institute of Peace Leadership, and in recent cases over international broadcasting. Now, eventually, Mr. Secretary, you sent Congress notice of your intent to collapse the USAID into state. Only you didn't consult with this committee. That's required by law. It came without justification, also required by law, and it came long after USAID was reduced to rubble. So sadly, disregard for our laws and values, to me, has sort of become a pattern of your tenor, revoking visas when someone writes an op-ed you don't like, or reaching a secret deal to use taxpayer dollars to jail U.S. residents in a notorious foreign prison, no due process, or pointlessly leaving food assistance to rot in storage. Actually, in Dubai, we now have 500 tons of high-energy biscuits that expire in July. They're bought, they're shipped, they're stored, all at taxpayer expense. But you've condemned them to waste, and that is one example of many. Now, another pattern that I'm deeply worried about is transparency. We have pressed you for information. Our staffs have sent you countless emails and briefing requests so we can do our job here. There are hundreds of unanswered requests and no effort to address them. And Mr. Secretary, that's got to change. Even your plan to reorganize the State Department came with no information on the 270 offices you are moving to eliminate, the proposed layoffs, or how USAID would be merged into state. I won't ask you whether impounding billions of dollars is legal. It is not. I won't ask you whether it's efficient to pay people not to work or fire them without determining staffing needs. But, and I won't ask you if cutting 91% of our counter-narcotic and law enforcement programs make us safer, abruptly abandoning agreements with allies makes us stronger, or ceding our global leadership to China makes us more prosperous. Of course not. We know that. We have worked together for years in a bipartisan way to advance U.S. interests and fund those programs. So with respect to my colleagues, how long are we going to sit here and watch this silently? Are we going to roll over as Trump tramples our laws and undermines our U.S. leadership, burns down what we have spent decades building, and let millions of people across our globe suffer and die? Or are we going to stand up, push back, assert our constitutional power of the purse? And to my colleagues on both sides, this is the moment to decide whether this committee continues to be a powerful bipartisan force, a force that I think we've all been proud of for a very long time, a force that is focused on safety and economic strength and national security, focused on leading the world in research and development and countering China and others with our soft power and our military power. Every single member of this committee knows what we are risking by letting this administration tear down so much. On USAID and other programs, we can always talk about how we can make things work better and other reforms. I don't think any of us are opposed to any of those considerations. We have been doing that in a bipartisan way for a long time. But that's not actually what Trump's fiscal year 2026 budget proposes. Now, Mr. Secretary, I know you would like to give a 5-minute speech back to me, but I only have a few seconds left, and I do need some information from you. As I said, we have asked and have not gotten. Can you tell me, will you share the text and details with my staff of your agreement with El Salvador and any other similar arrangements, including the funding details that we need to have?
Well, first, I'd like to respond to your 7-minute speech, which is primarily, I disagree like 99% of it. It's just not true. We've done nothing that's illegal. We've been in over 600 briefings to Congress. We've asked questions. We've answered questions repeatedly. We get hundreds of questions a day. We respond them as quickly as possible. And your characterization of the moves that we made
Mr. Secretary,
were
I would
false.
just tell you, we are here because we need the information so that we can write our budget and on a bipartisan.
Well, you'll have the
move
information you
forward.
need to write a budget.
Okay, so will we get the details on the El Salvador arrangement? Yes or no?
Well, which Salvador arrangement? are you
Your agreement that you've made with them about.
what agreement? The president of El Salvador agreed to take in
My
250
understanding,
gangbangers, and we
there's
sent
funding
them.
details we have not gotten. We need to see what the costs are in that.
Well, we haven't funded that. We've provided them law enforcement assistance.
But
I know
that-
you just claimed that we cut all this law enforcement assistance. We've provided El Salvador and other countries law enforcement assistance. They have the right to spend that money any way they wish. But they did us a big favor. They took 250 dangerous trained out. We didn't deport any U.S. residents. No U.S. residents
I'm
were
not going to
reported.
argue with you on that.
Well,
We
there's
have
not an
to-
argument, but don't say we deported U.S. residents because we didn't. I don't deport anybody.
I'm not asking.
But we didn't deport U.S.
I'm asking
residents.
you whether we can see the details of the arrangements, including the funding details.
I'm giving you
as
the
an
details.
appropriation.
The arrangements are we provide law enforcement funding to El Salvador, among other countries. How they choose to spend that money internally is up to
I take that as
them.
a no. How
But I
about-
can tell you,
Can you give me the details on the 200-plus offices you're proposing to
Sure, we've
eliminate?
provided
We need that. Can I get your commitment to
sure, of
give
course.
us those?
It's part of our reorg.
How about the details and justifications of your proposed rescissions from programs you claim are out of alignment with administration priorities? Are we going to get the details of that, funding priorities?
On rescissions and impoundment and things of this nature, that's obviously an OMB function, and I would talk to them about that in regard to what's going to go on with that money. I can tell you the contracts we canceled, and I can list to you the contracts we canceled and the rationale why, because I went through
Can you
them
get
myself.
those to us like today? So we can
contracts?
make our- Yes, and the funding arrangements that you've made. That's what I'm asking for.
Funding arrangements with who?
For any of the rescissions, for any of the funding, for any of the multiple congressional directives that you have given out so that we as an appropriations committee can make our funding decisions.
Sure, you're going to have all that information
you.
when you
I
put together a
appreciate that.
budget.
Bien, señores, acabamos de ver declaraciones muy picantes de Patty Murray, que la verdad es que se lanzó con todo. Me encantó esta intervención de Patty Murray porque le dijo paso por paso todas las irregularidades que están existiendo en la administración de Marco Antonio Rubio, un fiel total del presidente Donald Trump. Le dijo primero, si no mal recuerdo, que ha estado confiscando miles de millones de dólares por parte de USDA, que si bien podemos saberlo un poco más a fondo, es un departamento dedicado para el tema de la agricultura, para la fomentación de diversos alimentos en el territorio de los Estados Unidos. También supimos por parte de Patty Murray que Trump evitó mucha ayuda extranjera con este tema de que no ha estado está existiendo un desabasto en la canasta básica de los Estados Unidos por causa de los mismos aranceles que este señor ha estado imponiendo. También Patty Murray nos comenta y acusa severamente a Marco Rubio de abandonar a sus socios mayoritarios en el mundo, o sea, haciendo una referencia muy exacta hablando sobre México y Canadá. Y bueno, también su departamento se negó a pagar por dichos servicios que ha estado utilizando. El departamento, valga la expresión, el departamento de Marco Rubio. Y aquí es donde le preguntas, ¿a dónde está el dinero? ¿Dónde está el dinero? Dice, no has pagado ni un solo dólar que el tribunal más exigente de los Estados Unidos está exigiendo. eh, por todos estos temas están existiendo muchísimos despidos de los trabajadores estadounidenses y también, sobre todo, es algo muy importante que ha estado revocando visas a quienes los critican. Eso es gravísimo. Gravísimo. Eso de estar revocando visas a personas que tienen, en este caso podría ser yo, pero como yo no tengo, digamos, la necesidad de estar entrando en ese país, eh, tengo toda la libertad absoluta de estar criticando a este gobierno y sobre todo me sabe mal por las personas que no pueden tener la libertad de expresión, de hacer una crítica constructiva contra ese gobierno y sobre todo ese gobierno tiene la piel sumamente delgada porque no tolera ninguna crítica, no tolera nada, tiene la piel sumamente delgadita y hasta donde yo sé, eso es censura. Y hasta donde yo sé, esas solamente son prácticas de ellos que les encanta decir a cualquier persona que no sea en línea con ellos, dictadores. Y sobre todo, como bien lo dice Patty Murray, usar el dinero de los estadounidenses y de los no estadounidenses, porque también los que no son estadounidenses pagan impuestos de cierta manera, eh, estar donde él está negando que no han deportado a ningún estadounidense de los Estados Unidos y ya lo vimos que sí y hay muchas pruebas de que sí lo están haciendo vía Kristi Noem. También le está diciendo Patty Murray a Marco Rubio que claro que está mal usar el dinero de los estadounidenses para encarcelar estadounidenses y para colmo en el extranjero. Eso está terriblemente mal. Y sobre todo, también espero que me estén siguiendo la línea de cómo se están desapareciendo cosas y con ello es el recorte y con ello quedan fondos disponibles y luego congelan otros fondos. Patty Murray lo dijo muy bien, desapareciste el 91% de los programas antinarcóticos. Todo el esfuerzo que está haciendo México para contribuir con ese tema de los esfuerzos, uy, se me movió aquí la pantalla, para contribuir con los esfuerzos de, pues, en contra de las sustancias prohibidas que venden los cárteles narcotraficantes de México. Esta persona desaparece todos los programas antinarcóticos, el 91% de ellos. Y bueno, muy bien, Patty Murray se lo dice, que ellos ya no se van a quedar cruzados de brazos, sobre todo viendo cómo Donald Trump pisotea las leyes, hace lo que se le antoja, y por eso la corte ya le ordenó a Donald Trump el bloqueo de esos aranceles, porque eso del Día de la Liberación fue un berrinche político. Sobre todo, señores, yo aquí les pregunto, y Patty Murray también nos pregunta, y todos le preguntamos a Marco Rubio, ¿dónde está el dinero? ¿Dónde está el dinero? Pero bueno, señores, hasta aquí el video. Vamos ahora a comenzar con este tipo de videos. Me encantó la intervención de Patty Murray, muy clara, muy concisa, muy objetiva, no se calentó. Al contrario, vimos la misma tónica de Marco Rubio, igual que Christy Noem. No estaba dejando hablar, estaba dando puras... respuestas vacías que no llevaban absolutamente nada. Pero bueno, o sea, ¿qué es lo que opinan ustedes? Me encantaría saber cuál es la opinión, qué opinión les merece esto y sobre todo, suscríbanse, es totalmente gratis. Apoyan muchísimo al canal y sobre todo ustedes no se pierden ningún video porque está sumamente caliente el Congreso. Y personajes como estos, sinceramente, no le están ayudando para nada a los Estados Unidos. Les mando un abrazo y nos vemos en la siguiente. Bye bye.